I need space to figure things out, Emma said as we sat on the hotel balcony overlooking Nashville's skyline. 4 years together, and she was delivering this bombshell like she was discussing weekend dinner plans. I owned a physical therapy clinic in Phoenix, had built something real with my life, and I thought we were building something real together too. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd been carrying an engagement ring in my jacket pocket for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment to ask her father for his blessing when we got back home. I'd already started mentally planning the proposal dinner at that Italian restaurant where we'd had our first anniversary, the one where she always ordered the butternut squash ravioli and spent 20 minutes photographing her food before taking a single bite. Emma continued explaining how our relationship felt too predictable, too comfortable, like she was reading from a script she'd rehearsed during her morning yoga sessions. I listened without interrupting as she talked about needing to rediscover herself and explore what else was out there before settling down permanently. She gestured vaguely toward the city lights below us, as if the answer to her existential crisis was somewhere out there among the honky-tonks and tourist traps. She kept emphasizing that this wasn't about me personally, just about timing and her need to experience life independently before making any permanent commitments. I found it fascinating how she could make a relationship-ending conversation sound like a business proposal, complete with disclaimers and carefully chosen language designed to minimize her culpability. When she finished her speech, I simply said that if space was what she needed, we should do a complete break from all contact so she could figure things out properly. The look of surprise that crossed her face told me she'd expected negotiation, pleading, or at least some kind of emotional reaction that would give her control over the situation. Instead, I stood up, went inside, and started packing my belongings from our shared hotel room with the methodical efficiency I used when reorganizing my clinic's equipment inventory. Emma followed me around the room asking if I understood what she was really saying, whether I wanted to discuss boundaries for our break, and if I thought we should still text occasionally to check in on each other's well-being. I told her that someone who needs space to figure out their feelings probably shouldn't be maintaining daily contact with the person they're taking space from, and that half measures would only prolong whatever process she felt she needed to go through. She seemed genuinely confused by my logical approach to her emotional chaos, as if she'd never considered that asking for space might actually result in getting space. I finished packing, told her I hoped she found whatever she was looking for, and drove the 8 hours back to Phoenix alone while she stayed to finish our romantic weekend getaway by herself. The last thing I saw in my rearview mirror was her standing on the hotel balcony, silhouetted against the Nashville skyline, probably wondering why her perfectly planned breakup speech hadn't gone according to script. I approached erasing Emma from my life with the same systematic precision I used when updating patient treatment plans at my clinic. The first step was removing her access to my Netflix account, where she'd created her own profile filled with reality dating shows that I'd never understood her obsession with watching. I deleted her contact information from my phone, removed her from my emergency contact list at work, and canceled our shared membership to Desert Rock Climbing Gym where we'd spent most Saturday mornings for the past 2 years. I particularly enjoyed climbing the intermediate routes while Emma preferred the easier beginner walls, but she'd always insisted we were building trust and communication through our shared hobby. Next, I systematically declined every invitation from our mutual friend group, including the monthly game nights at Marcus and Sarah's house where Emma always dominated the conversation during Settlers of Catan, and the summer barbecues at Tom's place where she'd spend the entire time posting Instagram stories instead of actually socializing. When my college buddy Dave called to invite me to his usual Thursday night trivia team, I politely explained that I was taking a break from group activities while focusing on expanding my practice. I removed Emma from my LinkedIn connections, unfollowed her on every social media platform without blocking her because I wanted her to see that I'd simply moved on, and deleted the dozens of photos we'd taken together during weekend hiking trips to Sedona and Flagstaff. When Emma texted me 3 days after Nashville asking about our planned Memorial Day camping trip to Sedona, I responded with a single sentence explaining that someone who needs space probably shouldn't be making vacation plans with the person they're taking space from. I started eating lunch alone at the small cafe near my clinic instead of the sandwich shop where Emma and I used to meet twice a week during her marketing job's flexible schedule, and I switched my gym routine to early morning sessions since she preferred evening workouts after her yoga classes. The completeness of my disappearance from our social circle shocked mutual friends who had always considered us the most stable and committed couple in our group, but when they pressed me for explanations, I simply told them I was honoring Emma's request for space by giving her the complete independence she'd asked for to figure out what she wanted from life. 2 weeks into Emma's space experiment, her younger sister Lucy started calling my clinic reception desk multiple times a day, claiming that Emma was having a severe mental health crisis and desperately needed my emotional support to get through what she dramatically described as the most difficult period of her entire life. My receptionist Jennifer, who had always liked Emma during our relationship, started looking concerned when Lucy called for the 4th time in one day, insisting that I was being cruel and heartless by abandoning Emma when she needed me most. Lucy explained that Emma was barely eating, spending entire days crying in her apartment, and questioning every decision she'd ever made about our relationship and her future. Next came Emma's roommate Sophia, who somehow obtained my college friends' phone numbers and created a group text message demanding that everyone pressure me into reaching out to Emma because she apparently just needed reassurance about our future together rather than actual space to think. Sophia insisted that Emma's request for space was really a cry for help and that any decent human being would recognize that she was simply scared of commitment rather than genuinely wanting to end our relationship. When that approach failed to break my resolve, Emma's parents started calling my mother at her work number, demanding to know why I was punishing their daughter for being honest about her feelings and emotional needs during what they described as a normal relationship rough patch. My mother, who had always been diplomatic about Emma despite having private reservations about her entitled attitude, listened politely to their emotional appeals before explaining that she'd raised me to respect other people's stated wishes and boundaries. The harassment campaign escalated when Emma's family members started showing up at my physical therapy clinic during business hours, claiming they needed to check on my well-being and mental state during this difficult transition period. My business partner Mike mentioned receiving multiple phone calls from people asking about my emotional stability and whether I was handling the breakup appropriately, which concerned me because this kind of drama could damage my professional reputation in our tight-knit healthcare community. I started documenting every contact attempt with timestamps and details because the coordinated nature of their pressure campaign was beginning to feel like systematic harassment designed to wear down my resistance to their demands. When the proxy pressure campaign failed to break my no-contact policy, Emma escalated to direct stalking behavior that forced me to completely restructure my daily routine for my own safety and peace of mind. She started appearing at my regular morning coffee shop on Mill Avenue, sitting at the table by the window where she could watch me order my usual large dark roast with 1 sugar, pretending to read business magazines while obviously monitoring my arrival and departure times. I switched to a different coffee place across town, but within 3 days she'd somehow figured out my new location and was there again, this time with her laptop open and fake work documents spread across the table in an elaborate performance of coincidental presence. Next she began showing up at my Tuesday and Thursday evening yoga classes at Desert Zen Studio, claiming she'd suddenly developed a passionate interest in mindfulness and stress reduction during this difficult period of self-discovery. The instructor Lisa mentioned that Emma had asked detailed questions about my attendance schedule and whether I typically stayed for the optional meditation sessions afterward. When I stopped going to yoga entirely, Emma moved on to stalking my volunteer shifts at the Phoenix Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, where I spent Saturday mornings helping care for injured desert animals and birds of prey. She'd never shown any interest in wildlife conservation during our 4-year relationship, but suddenly she was passionate about learning how to feed orphaned owlets and clean enclosures for recovering javelinas. After 2 weeks of maintaining complete silence during these obvious ambush encounters, I started receiving desperate voicemails on my clinic's business line, with Emma begging for just one conversation to clear the air and explain her emotional state properly. Her messages became increasingly frantic, with her claiming that my silence was causing her severe anxiety and that she just needed closure to move forward with her life. When I maintained my complete no-contact stance despite her escalating desperation, someone broke into my home office on a Wednesday night while I was working late at the clinic, destroying my computer equipment and scattering patient files across the floor in what appeared to be a rage-fueled tantrum. The intruder had spray-painted the word coward across my desk in red letters and smashed my backup hard drive against the wall, causing over $2,000 in damages to equipment that contains sensitive patient information and billing records. My neighbor's security camera captured footage of a figure matching Emma's height and build leaving the area around 11:30 that night, though she vehemently denied any involvement when questioned by the responding police officers who filed my report. 3 weeks after the break-in, Emma's attorney contacted my lawyer with a cease and desist letter that was so legally baseless it would have been comical if it weren't potentially damaging to my professional reputation in Phoenix's healthcare community. The letter demanded that I stop harassing Emma through mutual friends and social media platforms, and accused me of withholding personal belongings that she claimed included irreplaceable family heirlooms worth several $1,000s in sentimental and monetary value. My attorney Rebecca found the claims laughable since I'd maintained complete no contact and had never possessed any items belonging to Emma's family, but she recommended we respond formally to protect my interests and gather counter-evidence. During the legal discovery process, Rebecca's investigation revealed information that completely recontextualized Emma's Nashville space request and made me realize I'd been living with a calculating stranger for months without recognizing her deception. Credit card statements showed that Emma had been taking what she described as girls' weekends and spa retreats, but the charges revealed solo trips to Austin, Denver, and Portland where she'd been secretly interviewing for marketing positions with companies she'd never mentioned to me. Hotel receipts showed single occupancy rooms booked under her name only, contradicting her stories about sharing accommodations with college friends during these supposed bonding trips. Phone records revealed extensive late-night conversations with her ex-boyfriend Connor, who lived in Austin and worked for a tech startup that had offered Emma a senior marketing position 3 months before our Nashville breakup. These calls had occurred during our romantic weekend getaways to Sedona and Flagstaff, meaning she'd been secretly coordinating her exit strategy while telling me she loved me and wanted to build our future together. Bank statements showed Emma had been systematically transferring money from our shared vacation savings account into her personal checking account, accumulating over $4,000 that we'd supposedly been saving for a European trip she'd suggested we take for our 5th anniversary. Real estate browsing history on her laptop showed she'd been researching Austin neighborhoods and apartment complexes for over 6 months, complete with saved searches for one-bedroom units near Connor's workplace and detailed budget calculations based on her potential new salary. Employment verification documents revealed she'd been using my business as a professional reference without my knowledge, listing me as her domestic partner and financial guarantor for apartment applications in Texas. The evidence painted a clear picture of someone who had spent the better part of a year methodically planning her departure while maintaining the facade of a committed relationship, using my emotional investment and financial stability as backup insurance while she secured her preferred alternative. 4 months after Emma's space request, I discovered through Instagram stories posted by our mutual friend Marcus that she had relocated to Austin and was publicly dating Connor, with photos showing them at South by Southwest music festivals and exploring trendy restaurants in the downtown entertainment district. The timeline revealed that Emma had moved to Texas less than 3 weeks after our Nashville conversation, which meant she'd already accepted Connor's job offer and arranged her housing situation before she'd even asked me for space to figure things out. Emma's sister Lucy accidentally confirmed the calculated nature of the entire situation during an angry phone call where she demanded that I stop being vindictive and cruel to Emma during her transition period. Lucy let slip that Emma and Connor had been planning her Austin move for several months before our breakup, and that the space conversation was specifically designed to give Emma time to relocate without the guilt and complications of outright infidelity charges. When mutual friends started questioning the suspiciously fast timeline of Emma's new relationship on social media posts, Emma began crafting a revisionist narrative that painted our 4-year relationship as emotionally abusive and psychologically damaging to her mental health and personal growth. Her Instagram stories featured vague posts about toxic relationships and emotional manipulation, with captions about finally finding someone who appreciated her independence and supported her career ambitions unlike certain controlling people from her past. Emma's carefully curated social media campaign included inspirational quotes about recognizing emotional abuse, recovering from trauma bonds, and learning to trust again after being with someone who tried to limit her potential and stifle her dreams. I screenshot the contradictory evidence showing her calculated planning and deception, but I refused to defend myself publicly or engage in social media warfare because I knew that anyone who mattered would eventually piece together the inconsistencies themselves. Several mutual friends privately reached out to me after analyzing the timeline and noticing discrepancies in Emma's story, particularly when they realized she'd been house hunting in Austin while simultaneously telling them how committed she was to building a future with me in Phoenix. Tom, who had hosted many of our group barbecues, mentioned that Emma had asked him not to tag me in photos from his Memorial Day party because she was trying to protect my feelings during our difficult breakup, but the party had occurred 2 weeks before our Nashville trip. Marcus called to apologize for initially believing Emma's version of events, explaining that he'd started questioning her narrative when she posted photos of her fully furnished Austin apartment just days after claiming she needed months of space to figure out what she wanted from life. 10 months after Nashville, Emma returned to Phoenix unannounced and ambushed me at my clinic during lunch break, tearfully explaining that her Austin adventure had been a complete disaster and that Connor had turned out to be an unreliable commitment phobe who treated relationships like temporary entertainment. She looked genuinely broken as she described how Connor had refused to introduce her to his family, never included her in important decisions, and ultimately dumped her when his ex-girlfriend moved back to Austin and wanted to reconcile their previous relationship. Emma's marketing job had been eliminated during company restructuring just 3 months after her arrival, leaving her financially dependent on Connor, who had made it clear that he considered her more of a convenient roommate than a serious romantic partner. When she tried to discuss their future together, Connor had laughed and told her she was taking their casual relationship far too seriously, suggesting she move back to Phoenix if she wanted something more traditional and boring. Emma stood in my office lobby with mascara-stained cheeks, begging me to consider rebuilding what we'd had together because she'd finally realized how good our relationship had been and how much she'd taken my loyalty and commitment for granted. She insisted that her time away had taught her to appreciate stability, consistency, and genuine partnership rather than chasing excitement and uncertainty with someone who couldn't provide emotional security. I listened calmly while she explained that Connor had been using her for convenience and companionship without any intention of building a real future together, and that she'd learned the difference between genuine love and temporary attraction through painful experience. When Emma finished her prepared speech about growth and maturity, I told her that someone who spends months planning a secret exit strategy while saying they love you every day isn't capable of genuine love or authentic commitment to any relationship. I explained that she wasn't back because she'd realized my value or genuinely missed our connection, but because her backup plan had failed catastrophically and she needed someone reliable to provide the stability and security that Connor had refused to offer. Emma accused me of being unforgiving and holding grudges instead of recognizing that people make mistakes and deserve second chances when they've learned from their errors and grown as individuals. I mentioned that I'd been dating someone for the past 4 months, a nurse practitioner named Rachel who worked at the hospital where I referred complex cases, and that I was grateful Emma had shown me her true character before I'd proposed, saving me from building a marriage on lies and deception.